because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro.
No. It's with me, Matt Ohayon.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. 8.6 beer. Intense by nature. And Locage. If the last time you went to Locage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to Locage. It's gonna be sick.
Good Friday evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sick Podcast. The Italian Stallion is out. Enter the Hebrew Hammer. My name is Matt Ohayon. For those who do not know, thank you for joining us on this Friday evening, the Sick Podcast, brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. It is an asset-based 3PL provider offering outstanding service at incredible rates. Serving all of North America, Energy Transportation Group offers full service logistics support, and also brought to you by 8.6 Beer, Intense by Nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark. All right. Lots to get to. Just as a quick disclaimer here, I'm a little bit under the weather, so you might see me shut off my camera for a couple seconds while our guests are talking so I could, wipe away the schnotz from my nose, just because it's been a rough week for the kid. But don't worry, we're here. We're ready to give it our all. And who better to give it our all with than our first guest to talk Habs, Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette. Stu, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. All things considered, it's just a cold. We'll be all right. I actually did test myself for COVID today because I started coughing today. It turned out negative, so that's good. So all is well. All in all, no real complaints on my end.
You could be with me in Edmonton where it's about minus 20, but it's a dry cold, as they say out here.
Yeah, yes.
In my hotel room here, which is quite warm.
Well, I was actually going to bring that up because I saw you tweet out earlier in the day the weather from Edmonton, and did you bring extra socks? I looked at
the weather forecast before, but waiting at the airport for the Uber for about 3 minutes, I thought my ears were going to fall off. But it's a dry cold. I don't care. It's minus 20. It's minus 20. It's friggin' cold.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's funny because we have some pretty rough winters here in Montreal, and everyone always says at the beginning of the winter I turn into a little bit of a hermit because I hate the cold, and whenever it's -1, people will say to me, "Oh, it's only -1. It's only going to get colder." I go, "I know that doesn't make -1 not cold."
Well, the older I get, the more I realize why old people go to Florida in the winter.
That's all right. That's it. And whenever I go to Florida to visit the grandparents, I always say I can't wait to be them. So let's jump into it because it was a pretty busy week for the Canadiens. Not so much on the ice, only 2 games this week to this point. Started off with a 4-0 loss to San Jose. Jake Allen, of course, was in nets. He got the call again against Calgary last night, where they won 2-1, where they really stole that game. And that's kind of where I want to start because we've been talking a lot about the goaltending tandem, and I believe the last time we had you on my show was, we were talking about how Sam Montembeault was coming up. Jake Allen was playing okay. And, I feel like since then there's been a bit of a dip in play for Jake Allen. So I guess my question to you is, since you're in and around the locker room, why do they keep going with him rather than riding the hot hand?
Well, it's interesting because after the game last night, Jake Allen made 45 saves, stood on his head, first star, won the game for the team. And I said to him, what was it? What did it feel like when Marty St. Louis gave you that vote of confidence there a few days earlier when he said, you're the number 1 goalie? And he said, I don't read anything in the media. I didn't hear that. I didn't know that. And that's a veteran talking, right? That's a guy who just focuses on what he's doing. And he had struggled for a while, but, people forget that these guys are human beings. He has a newborn at home. I imagine Jake Allen hasn't been sleeping a lot recently, and this road might be perfect timing for him to get away from home, get in a hotel room, and get all the sleep he needs. And, he played really well last night. Maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe he didn't. It didn't. But one of the reasons the Canadiens signed Jake Allen to that extension is because he's a veteran. He's calm. He's cool. He understands the league. He's been a number one. He lost his number one job with the Blues when the Blues went on to win the Stanley Cup. There's nothing that's going to surprise him. And he even said, Sam Montembeault was the best goalie in the league for that little stretch he had. He had a .953 save percentage, I think it was. But the Canadiens, Jake Allen moving forward, they signed him to that 2-year extension. At some point, they might want to move him and get something for him. The more he plays, the better chance you have of getting something good in return, or a high draft pick if that's the way they want to go. But Jake Allen is a class human being. He's a perfect guy on this team. Just that veteran experience, that calmness back in the net. I think he's good for Sam Montembeault too. I think he takes some pressure off of Sam Montembeault. And Montembeault, to his credit, has played really well this year. Last year, he sucked it up. He played through that wrist injury on his blocker hand. He had told me earlier, every time he made a blocker save, he didn't know how much it was going to hurt. He sucked it up for the team. He played through it. That's one of the reasons I think they rewarded him with a contract in the offseason. But Marty St. Louis, Jake Allen said his communication with Marty St. Louis is fantastic. And I think all the players say the same thing. Marty's communication skills are one of the biggest qualities he brings to this team, along with the instant credibility factor as a Hall of Fame player. So I don't think Sam Montembeault took it wrong. If he did hear Marty say that, Jake Allen said he didn't. But Jake Allen just showed last night again that, he's not a number one goalie who can play 55, 60 games, but he still can be the number one guy in this team. And he's a really, really great person to be around. So personally, I was happy to see him play really well last night.
Yeah, and you know what? I completely agree with you because, I feel, especially, I felt really bad for him against Buffalo last week. He let in those 3 goals right at the beginning of the game, and he looked really, really shaky. Couldn't really settle in after that. And, the game was pretty much a wash after the first 3 minutes, even though the Canadiens kind of started to mount a comeback. And I think last night was... it had to be right what the doctor ordered, right?
It was. He was fantastic. And you could tell right from the start of the game that he was on. Carey Price was the same way when he was playing. You could tell Carey Price early in a game when he was on or when he wasn't on. Jake Allen will never be Carey Price. He's the first that'll tell you that. But he was on last night. And again, I wonder how much, maybe it has something to do with sleep. Maybe it doesn't. But, I have 2 kids. They're 23 and 21. I remember what it was like when they were newborns, and you don't sleep a whole hell of a lot. So maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe it didn't. But Jake Allen, Marty St. Louis showed his confidence in him. I asked Marty St. Louis after the game, were you smiling behind the bench the way you played? And he says, no. He says, I expected. That's the way Jake Allen can play. He says, I wasn't smiling. I wasn't surprised. That's why he's our number one guy. I know he can play like that. He had a couple of bad games. He bounced back. And we'll see what happens. The Canadiens had a day off today, so we don't know if he's going to start in Edmonton tomorrow. I imagine he will. But we'll find out tomorrow morning when Marty St. Louis speaks with the media at around 10:30 local time here in Edmonton. But I think he'll get another start.
So I'm curious because we've spoken about how Sam Montembeault has been playing so well, and Jake Allen. With exception of last night, it's been a little subpar. So. What's the relationship like between those 2 goaltenders? Because you said having Jake Allen around is great for Sam Montembeault, and I agree. It makes sense. A veteran who's been around, helping the young guy, developing, coming up. What's their relationship like?
Well, I imagine it's good. Jake Allen is I can't imagine anybody not liking Jake Allen. He's just one of those guys. He's just such a humble, nice gentleman. He's just a really nice guy to be around. So I'm sure their relationship is good. The thing is, Sam Montembeault, Jake Allen, beyond this contract he signed, doesn't really have a future with the Canadiens. They're going to find a goalie of the future at some point. As I mentioned earlier, I think at some point Kent Hughes is going to try and move him. I don't think Sam Montembeault has a future as the number one goalie with the Canadiens, but he might have a future as a backup to whoever they might bring in or draft or develop as a number one goalie. But for Sam Montembeault, it's for him. Neither of these guys I don't think can play 10 games in a row. Jake Allen, we've seen in the past that the more he plays a lot of games in a row, the more his game starts to fall off, the more likely he is to get injured. It's sort of a similar thing with Montembeault. They're both in a perfect world, they'd both be a backup goalie to a Carey Price. Carey Price isn't around, so they're dealing with what they have right now. But it's sort of, I can see it moving forward. It'll be like a 1A and a 1B. By the end of the season, 82 games, you can see Jake Allen playing 50 to maybe 45 to 50, and Sam Montembeault playing the rest. But for Marty St. Louis, he's never been a goalie, but he's been everything else in the NHL. I mean, he always says that he can relate to every player because, he's not been drafted. He's been put on waivers. He wasn't claimed on waivers. He was a fourth liner, a third liner, a second liner, a first liner, an MVP, a Hall of Famer. But he knows how a locker room works, even though he said last night he rarely goes in the locker room. He leaves the locker room to the players. But he understands how guys think, and he understands how Jake Allen thinks, and he understands how Sam Montembeault thinks, even though he wasn't a goalie. But he gets it, right? And that's one of his biggest strengths. He gets what it's like to be an NHL player. Sean Monahan said yesterday when I asked him about Marty St. Louis, he says he understands the day-to-day grind of the NHL. And that's exactly what it is. It's a day-to-day grind. And there's on-ice stuff, there's off-ice stuff. As I mentioned before, Jake Allen's wife gave birth to their second or third child recently. There's a lot of things that go on. People just see these guys on the ice and sometimes forget that they're human beings also. But Marty St. Louis, he's been a player. He's had a family. He gets it. And I think that's one of his biggest strengths as a coach. And I think that's why the players can relate to him as well as they do.
So I'm happy you brought up, the on ice versus off ice because, I was doing a little digging and, Tony spoke about it. I believe it was on Monday that it was the 1 year anniversary or close to it, at least, of Bergevin being fired by the Canadiens. And, so naturally I took a look at their record at this point last season, and it was 6-17-2. Right now they are sitting at 12-10-1. That's good for 11th in the East, but 2 points out of a playoff spot. So we're in the beginning of December. We're in the dog days of the season, and I guess First and foremost, I guess my biggest question is, of course, other than their record, what's the biggest difference you see on the ice and in the room, from this year to last year? I mean, of course, there's the coaching change, but from player morale standpoint, what are you seeing?
Well, I think the final dagger for Dominic Ducharme last season was when Josh Anderson said, "It's not fun coming to the rink anymore." I don't know if you remember that quote, and it wasn't. The guys are having fun now. We're waiting outside the locker room last night after the win, and they're playing Tom Petty's "I Won't Step Down." I can't forget the title.
I won't back down. Yeah,
I won't back down. Sorry. And you hear the hooting. They're hollering. They're screaming. They're celebrating. They're having fun. They're having fun on the ice. They're having fun off the ice. I wrote a column earlier today. It's on the Gazette website, hockeyinsideout.com, about the relationship between Jackeye and Kovacevic. Two Hamilton boys who were never expected to make the team this season. They're sort of living a dream now. It's a team. They're having fun. They're coming to the rink. They're playing. They're having a coach who just lets them play. Go play. With Slavkovsky, moved Slavkovsky up to the second line last night. He's like, play your game. Go play. Don't worry about mistakes. We'll correct the mistakes as he keeps saying mistakes aren't a problem. When they become a trend, they're a problem. So they're having fun, and it shows on the ice and it shows off the ice. They seem to be just a really good group. When Carey Price and Shea Weber were here, and no knock on them, but they took up a lot of oxygen in the locker room. They were like it was their room. Now with Nick Suzuki coming in as a captain, there's just sort of it's more of a family atmosphere in the locker room. I think these guys really get along well. They really like their coach. Their coach is honest with them. That's what players want. A coach who's going to be honest with them. Josh Anderson, talked with him, and playing for John Tortorella, and Marty St. Louis played for John Tortorella, and they both loved the guy because he was honest with them. He's an honest coach. He was playing well, he let you know when you got lots of ice time. If you weren't playing well, he let them know. Obviously, Marty St. Louis has a different personality and a temperament than John Tortorella. He's much more calm, but it's just they're having fun. And you mentioned Marc Bergevin, the 1 year anniversary, and I've said this before, probably on your show, and I've written it many times. To me, the downfall of Marc Bergevin is that he made things personal. He couldn't separate the business of hockey from the personal side of hockey. It got ugly with PK Subban. It got ugly with Max Pacioretty. It got ugly with Radulov. It got ugly with Markov. It became personal with him. And when you're in a management position in any business, including GM of a hockey team, you can't make things personal. Marty St. Louis doesn't make things personal. Kent Hughes doesn't make things personal. Jeff Gorton doesn't make things personal. There's a business side to hockey, and there's the hockey side. And when Marty St. Louis has to, when he tells Jake Allen he's the number one goalie, and it's interesting because the morning skate at the Bell Center before the game against the Sharks, Montembeault was doing his stretching, and Marty St. Louis skated over and talked to him. And he was talking to him for maybe 5 minutes. And I said after the morning skate, I asked him, what did you say to him? He said, I just told him, great job. You did a great job. You had earned the right to play 2 games in a row. You played 2 games in a row, and you did fantastic. Great job. And now we're going back. Jake Allen starting. So it's so much. It's more of a family atmosphere. It's more of a respect in the room for everybody. And we're seeing it. It's going to be fun to watch these guys, especially these young players, as they grow and develop together. There's so many guys in that 20, 21, 22, 23 age group. They're going to grow up together on and off the ice. And I think it's going to be fun to watch for Canadiens fans as this team continues to develop moving forward. There's no panic. They have a management team, again, that's not going to make things personal. And it's night and day. I mean, it's incredible how much of a change it's been in 1 year from where they were and how ugly things were at the end of the Marc Bergevin era to where they are right now.
Yeah, and the word that piqued my interest especially, and I feel like you painted a great picture there for everyone, because you have the privilege of being in and around the locker room, so the fans don't really get to see that side. And the word that sparked my interest, because I thought of it while reading that column that you wrote, was brotherhood, and it was kind of like a brotherhood between Kovacevic and Arbor Xhekaj, the way they were talking about each other in your column, and I feel like that was kind of a microcosm of the entire group. It just looks like on the ice they're just playing for each other. There will be times where something happens on the ice, a dirty hit, something happens, and it happens behind the play and no one reacts. Kind of like I feel like that happened last year at some point. There was a dirty hit on someone and nobody reacted to it, and it got blown up considering the situation that the Canadiens are in. They're losing 1 million games in a row, and it looks like no one cares. Where even in like big losses, I'm thinking of the one back in I think it was in Columbus, or maybe it was when Columbus was here. They got smacked pretty good, and they still showed that, hey, we're not going to be pushed around until the final buzzer. That I just hearing that team, because I mean, again, like you put it, they just seem like a family.
Well, hockey players, as I mentioned earlier, they're human beings, and if you work for a company where the atmosphere isn't fun, you don't like your boss, maybe you don't respect your boss, you go into work, you're not having fun, are you going to work as hard as you would if you're in an atmosphere where you like your boss, where you like your fellow employees, you're happy to go to work? Of course you're going to work harder in that environment. It's the same thing to the hockey team. These guys are human beings, and they're creating an environment right now where there's a trust in the room, and I think there's a trust in management. I go back to how Marc Bergevin made things personal. You look at how Kent Hughes handled the Jeff Petrie situation. Compared, Marc Bergevin probably would have blown a gasket, and who knows what would have happened with Petrie. Kent Hughes very calmly said, we understand, he wants to leave here. We understand his family's not happy here. We're going to try and trade him. But if we can't trade him, he has a contract and he's going to stay here. And it was just very matter of fact. We're going to try and move you, but it's not personal. Kent Hughes has a family. He understands, he's not happy here. It's probably best for both parties if we can move him. But we're not just going to move him for the sake of moving him. We're going to try and find the deal. And then you look at the deal they got, and they brought in Mike Matheson. It was a good trade. I mean, Mike Matheson came in, a similar type of player to Jeff Petrie. Some people have been critical of Matheson's performance so far this season, probably forgetting that he missed the whole preseason. He missed a good chunk of the start of the season. It's tough, man, just to come in, get dropped in game 15 or whatever, and play 20 minutes on defense in the NHL and be right there. It's going to take a little while. You need to have a little bit of patience for a guy like Matheson. He has a history behind him. He's a good hockey player. He's a great skater. He's going to be a good defenseman with the Canadiens. He's had a couple little rough spots maybe so far, but he's going to be good. So it's just a case of handling things like without emotion and as a smart hockey businessman. And they have smart hockey people in place now. They have three-headed. You have Gorton and Hughes and St. Louis, and they're all friends. They all get along. I've mentioned this before. A lot of people say, "Oh, Jeff Gorton just hired all his friends." Well, if I'm running a company and I'm hiring my top people, I'm probably going to hire people that I know and I'm friends with, because I know they're not going to be afraid to tell me if they think I'm doing something stupid. You know what I mean? If you're your best buddy is the first guy who's going to tell you you're an idiot, right? If you do something that he doesn't think is right, you're going to respect his opinion, you'll argue back and forth, and you're still going to be buddies afterwards. And that's sort of the similar situation the Canadians have set up here, where there are three guys who are friends, they respect each other, they maybe have some different opinions on guys, and they'll sit around and they'll make their points one way or the other. At the end of the day, Jeff Gorton's the top guy. He's the top guy and executive vice president of hockey operations. He sort of has the final say or the final advice for Kent Hughes. But it makes sense the way they're set up right now. It just makes sense. And it's so nice to see things not get personal. I mean, Marc Bergevin made things personal with his players. He made things personal with the media. You go back to, after the Logan Mailloux situation, and Jeff Molson held his news conference, and they handpicked which reporters they were going to allow to go on the Zoom conference and ask questions. It was everything was like, it was personal. And I've said this before, I might have said to you, Marc Bergevin GM the same way he played. You slash me, I'm going to punch you in the face. That's one of the reasons he played so many years in the NHL. He was a tough defenseman. You give it to me, I'll give it to you twice as hard. But that doesn't work in business, no matter what company you're running.
Well, and you know what? I'm so happy you brought that up, because, I could get into it for a little bit. I mean, when this was going down, I had Marc Bergevin's back up until, I want to say, maybe, he brought me back on board, after the Stanley Cup run of the COVID year. But I was kind of, over the situation and over him as a GM the year before that. And I always said to my friends, I go, when it came to negotiations, for example, you look at the PK Subban negotiation, he ended up getting I think it was $9.5 million a year.
Jeff Molson had to step in to get that situation.
Right. So here, what I'm saying is, you have this guy in Marc Bergevin, and, by all accounts, I thought his pro scouting was fantastic. He was a very good trader, obviously some big blips in his, in some moves, but he made some good deals, and but he never made the right deal. And when you're in a contract negotiation, it's Marc Bergevin against, in the case of PK Subban, you're going against Don Meehan, who's been, negotiating contracts for 30 years. And with all due respect to Marc Bergevin, what do you have? What kind of experience do you have? You have experiences, what was it, 15 years as an NHL defenseman or something like that?
Donnie Meehan at the end came out and won that thing, but
of course.
More than that, talking about the emotions of Marc Bergevin was the negotiations with Andrei Markov. Markov made the mistake of representing himself, and they're two alpha males, Andrei Markov and Marc Bergevin, and they just collided and butted heads. And instead of Marc Bergevin realizing how important Andrei Markov was to this team, their power play hasn't been good since he left. They couldn't get the puck out of their own end after he left. Andrei Markov did not want to leave. He was just looking for basically the same contract he had before, and Marc Bergevin tried to nickel and dime him, sort of saying, I'm more of the alpha dog than you are. I think that's part of what came into it. And they lost Andrei Markov, and it was so unnecessary. Markov should have had an agent, but he probably went into those negotiations thinking, look what I've done for this team. I mean, Andrei Markov,
he's been here forever.
So long. I've been here, he was 2 games away from 1,000 games or something like that. And then when he wanted to come back, he hired Alan Walsh as his agent. He wanted to come back just on a PTO to come back, and Bergevin wouldn't let him. That's making it personal. That's letting your emotions get the better of you, because the Canadiens would have been a better team at that point if they had brought Andrei Markov back. But Marc Bergevin's ego wouldn't allow it. Marc Bergevin's ego led to the contract information for Phillip Danault getting leaked. When Phillip Danault turned down the offer that Bergevin made to him, and Bergevin was upset, Danault didn't leak that information to the media. It came from somewhere, and it affected Phillip Danault. He was hurt. He was personally hurt, and that's one of the reasons he left Montreal. And for a team that has such an emphasis on having French Canadian players, he was the best French Canadian player they had, and they lost him in large part because of Marc Bergevin making it personal. And again, you can't run a hockey team that way, or you can't run any kind of business that way.
Yeah, I'm right there. I'm right there with you. And like you said, these two in Gorton and Hughes, you know, they get it, and they're businessmen. They're businessmen first, hockey men close second. You know, they're kind of synonymous.
And they treat people like human beings. I mean, you go back to Max Pacioretty. You know, he said that, yeah, he asked to be traded. No, he didn't ask to be traded. I mean, I think what happened is that Bergevin got so upset at Max Pacioretty one time about whatever, and Max Pacioretty said, well, if you hate me so much, why don't you trade me? And somehow that got spun into, oh, he asked to be traded. The Canadiens Marc Bergevin didn't want Max Pacioretty back. That's fine. You can argue he was a good captain, he was a bad captain. They wanted to move forward. So just say that. Just say, you know, you don't need to say he's a terrible captain if that's what they thought. You just need to say, you know, we're going in another direction. Max Pacioretty doesn't fit into our plans moving forward. We're going to look to make the best deal we possibly can. We thank Max Pacioretty for everything he did in Montreal. A guy who scored 30 goals every year on a lousy team with no knock on David Desharnais, but he's not a number one centerman on any other team in the NHL. And Max Pacioretty scored 30 goals year after year after year. He deserved to be treated better. Andrei Markov deserved to be treated better. Radulov deserved to be treated better. PK deserved to be treated better. It's fine if a management, like going back to Jeff Petrie, if you want to get rid of a guy or you're going to move a guy, you know, and now, you know, like Sean Monahan last night and the way he played against the Canadiens, now the big talk's going to be, are they going to move him at the trade deadline, which they probably, or are they going to keep him? But whatever Kent Hughes does, he's going to be open and honest with Sean Monahan, and he won't make it personal. He'll be, you know, Sean Monahan might say, you know, I really want to stay here. And he might say, well, we'd love to have you, but for us moving forward, the best thing for us is going to be if we move you and we can get a first round pick. It won't be personal. It'll just be a business decision. And again, whatever business you're running, honesty and being open with people and just being, you know, not, you know, you slash me, I'm going to slash you back twice as hard. And there's a whole new, around the Canadiens, right down to Chantal Maccabi, who deals with us with the media and with the players. I mean, it's night and day difference with her getting access to players and being able to speak to guys and getting the interviews that we were never able to get before. So it's the changes that have happened in the last year are quite remarkable. And I've been a critic of Jeff Molson in the past, and especially after the Logan fiasco. But I'll give Jeff Molson credit because it took a lot of guts to hire a unilingual American from Boston to run the Canadiens. You remember the front page of the Journal the next day after they hired Jeff? Man. It was like there were, you know, an American running the Canadiens. It's a big disgrace. But Jeff Molson went out and got the best hockey man he felt was available at the time. And ever since then, it's been a trickle-down effect. You know, he came in, Jeff Gorton came in, he said he wanted a modern-day coach. What's a modern-day coach? Marty St. Louis is a modern-day coach. He wanted a GM who was, you know, Kent Hughes. And he hired two. He hired a GM with no experience as a GM and a coach with no experience as a coach, apart from Bantam or Pee Wee or whatever he was coaching his kids. But they're smart guys. And as I mentioned before, he knows them. He knows them. He knows how smart they are. He knows them as friends. He knows them. They've spoken hockey, these guys, together for years and years and years. And the Canadiens now have a competent team running this team moving forward. And it's really been a long time. Like, you know, the game, you know, Serge Savard was like the last gen, really, you know, the winner of the last two Stanley Cups. But it was a different league back then. There wasn't a salary cap. There wasn't as many teams. As Molson said, it's almost impossible for one guy to handle all the GM duties in the NHL today, where things go with the salary cap and everything else. And kudos to Jeff Molson. He stepped away himself. I don't know how much that was his decision or how much after the Mayo fiasco there was pressure on him, maybe from other owners in the ownership group, sponsors, to do something different. But whatever the case was, Molson hired Jeff Gorton, stepped back, and everything was a sort of a domino effect since then. Excuse me. And, you know, Jeff Gorton came in and he said, we're going to focus on development. We're going to focus on bringing analytics into the game. We're going to modernize the Canadiens franchise. And that's exactly what they've done. The Canadiens today are a modern day NHL team.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And you know what? The thing that I love the most, just as we wrap up here, is that you mentioned you were being critical of Jeff Molson in the past, and I was too, of course. And I think what struck me the most about him hiring American, more than the guts it took, was okay, because you always hear noise, and I don't really buy into it all that much, but you always hear noise. Oh, he doesn't care. He's just using the Canadians as a cash grab. He's this, he's that, and I think hiring Jeff Gorton and then trusting him to hire Kent Hughes, like you said, an American, and by all accounts, Kent Hughes is born in Montreal. As far as I'm concerned, I was born in Montreal as well. I'm just as much Quebecois as Marc Bergevin is. That's just the way I see it. But I think the fact that
disagree with you about that, but that's a whole other story.
Right? Yeah, exactly. But all that to say is that it really seemed like he changed. Because
Molson changed.
Yeah, because he how many chances did he give Marc Bergevin, and it kind of seemed like he was pretty complicit throughout his entire regime, and then finally he said, enough's enough. I need to make a change, and we need to make drastic changes to this team.
Well, I think the Logan Mailloux situation led to a lot of this stuff. As I said before, more shocking than the fact that Canadians decided to draft Logan Mailloux was the fact they had no plan in place to handle. It's like they didn't expect any backlash from it. It's like, oh, nobody's going to care. And then, oh, yeah, well, a lot of people care.
The second it happened, Twitter kind of blew up.
I think that a billion-dollar company like the Canadiens wouldn't have anticipated and had a damage control plan in place if they were going to go ahead and draft Logan Mailloux is shocking. It's absolutely shocking that a billion-dollar industry would not have anticipated the backlash that would come, and they obviously didn't. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, some of the other members of the ownership group, some of the major sponsors were like that took a lot of the shine off the CH and what it stands for, right? The Canadiens are more than a hockey team, especially in Montreal and even within the NHL. So I think that sort of started the ball rolling. Before that, Jeff Molson, he was president of the team, but for all intents and purposes, he was sort of director of hockey operations. He's the guy that Marc Bergevin went to. What qualifications does Jeff Molson have to be
exactly
a hockey operator? Zero. He played hockey at LCC, and I think he played somewhere in college. I played high school hockey, and I'm not qualified to be a GM of a hockey team.
Right.
There's a whole lot that goes involved with that. Jeff Molson was born into a family. He was fortunate to be born into the family he was born into, but he was not qualified. And that's it's not a knock on him. It's just a fact. He wasn't qualified to be a hockey operations guy. And finally, either he realized it or other people around him realized it and pointed it out to him. Because you got to remember, when Réjean Tremblay had a story maybe a year or so before all this happened about how Vinny Danfus was going to be named director of hockey operations for the Canadiens.
Right.
Jeff Molson called a news conference shortly after that to shoot it down and explain all the reasons why he thought he was qualified to be in that position. So what changed between then and Jeff Gorton coming in? Logan Mailloux was one of them. The team sucking was another one. And it was time to do something. And again, I'll give Jeff Molson, I've been critical of him. I was just critical of him now, but I'll give him credit that he went out and he hired Jeff Gorton. I've heard from people I trust that Gary Bettman might have had a say in suggesting Jeff Gorton for that position, which is understandable when Jeff Gorton's track record and the NHL and Gary Bettman, they want the original 6 teams to be good. It's good for business, right? The Leafs are good and the Blackhawks are good and the Bruins are good and the Canadiens are good and the Rangers are good. It's good for business. And, when the Canadiens aren't good, when they're not making the playoffs, it's not only not good for fans in Montreal, businesses in Montreal, it's not good for the business of the NHL. So Jeff Gorton's come in, and it's they're not panicking. They're ahead of schedule right now, obviously.
Right.
12. Last year was like after 60 games by the time I think they got their 12th win. So they're ahead of schedule, but Marty St. Louis has said many times he doesn't look at the standings. The standings aren't up in the Canadiens locker room. His big line is win the day. We're going to win the day. And every day we're going to try and get a little bit better and a little bit better. Well, if they keep getting a little bit better and better every day, even more than maybe they anticipated, then they're going to be better overall, maybe quicker than people thought. But the vision is, and Jeff Gorton said this right from the day he came in, it's not to be a good team for 1 year and go on a 1 year run. You mentioned a couple of years ago in Bergevin how you sort of got back. You thought more highly of Bergevin going on that Stanley Cup run. You got to remember Game 6 against the Maple Leafs in overtime. First round, they get outshot 13-2 and they win the game because Carey Price stands on his head. If they lose that game, Marc Bergevin is probably fired after the season. Dominic Ducharme, but Carey Price carried the Canadiens to the Stanley Cup.
Shit. And how many times can we say Carey Price carried the Canadiens?
You know, the final that year, but they have a plan in place. They have a solid plan in place. But Jeff Gorton said this also. I had a one-on-one interview with him beginning of the season. He said he doesn't have a timeline for it. Like it's not, might take 2 years, might take 4 years. They're letting things play out. And we're going to see, like, nobody expected the 4 rookie defensemen to be as good as they've been this season, right? I mean, Caden Goulet is a number 1 defenseman in the NHL. He is, as I keep saying, I don't believe his birth certificate. There's no way this kid's 20 years old. It's impossible that a 20-year-old kid can be as composed, as strong in puck battles, as on and off the ice. Just a really admirable kid. Like, to be that at 20 years old is unbelievable. So the 4 rookie defensemen have been better than they probably were anticipated. Kirby Dach's been better. I mean, they obviously saw something in Kirby Dach when Kent Hughes went. Right. Been better than they probably thought he'd be. Sean Monahan's been better than they probably thought he would be when they first went out and got him. So they've made smart moves, and the moves they've made have been even better than what they probably anticipated. They probably thought Caden Goulet, maybe 2-3 years from now, he can be a number 1, number 2 defenseman. He's there now. Arbor Jackeye, who nobody even thought he would make the team. Jonathan Kovacevic, they picked him up on waivers because they were desperate after Matheson got hurt. He comes in and he's playing while other guys, Jordan Harris has made a healthy scratch and stuff. Who would have thought that? But when you have smart people who make smart decisions, more often than not, those decisions work out. And that's what we're seeing now. Almost every decision that they've made has worked, including hiring Marty St. Louis as a coach. And that's, like, to me, that's the biggest thing in this process of moving forward, is hiring the right coach, that modern day coach I mentioned before that they said they needed. And for Hughes and Gorton to be able to, I remember when they hired Marty St. Louis, I was like, really? This guy's going from Pee-wee? I mean, he was a great player. Wayne Gretzky was a great player. He was not a good coach. But
right.
Marty St. Louis is showing that, as I've said, if coaching in the NHL didn't work out with him, the guy could be a motivational speaker. He's inspiring. He's intelligent. The players still talk about that first speech he made when he went to the locker room the day he was named coach, and how it just started everything, pushed everything in the direction we're seeing them going right now. So smart people making smart decisions, and we're seeing the results. And whether it's a team or you're selling water, whatever you're selling, whatever business you're in, you have smart people running your business, making smart decisions, your business is probably going to do well.
Well, I could say with certainty, I'll attest to that because we got smart people in Sammy and Agnello and their whole supporting cast running this podcast. And, it wouldn't be as successful without them. And it wouldn't be as successful without them getting guests like you. Stu, thank you very much. And do me a favor, stay warm.
I will.
Or at least try your best. At least we're going to Vancouver and Seattle after this. We'll probably be a little bit warmer. Yeah, I hope so. All right, Stu, have yourself a fine Friday evening and enjoy the hockey tomorrow.
Okay, good night.
All right, that was Stu Cowan. That was a great recap of, a comparison between last year of where the Canadiens were at to the day to this year. It's just incredible to see the progression. Anyways, we move forward on the Sick Podcast, which is brought to you by Playground, which has over 600 machines, poker tournaments, and playground casino games, daily promotions, and unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes away from downtown Montreal. It is Friday, and you know what that means.
TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. It's also football with Matt Ohayon.
Burrow hooks a pass, wide open, Chase, touchdown, Bengals.
Oh boy, do I have some things to say to our next guest and possibly even Sammy and Agnello. He's been with us for the past 2 weeks. I've really enjoyed him, so why not have him a third week in a row, make it a hat trick? It is Cash from Run My Bets. Cash, how we doing?
I'm good, man. I'm super excited to get into these games with you. This has been probably, it's looking like it's going to be one of my favorite slates I've ever seen, to be honest.
Well, I'm very happy you said that because, in my opinion, at least from my view on the surface, it was pretty tough slate to break down. But once
Yeah.
you go into the little nooks and crannies of each game, you can find a nice little value bet on every game. And I mean, first and foremost, I just want to know how did your Sunday end up being?
My Sunday card wasn't that great. It was okay. I think we broke even. On what we gave out on the show, though, it did really, really well. I think the show was 5-2 or 6-2. The show was great. A lot of stuff I said I was going to do on the show, I ended up not doing on Sunday,
Right.
and I regretted it. But it's okay because everyone that watched the show cashed out big. Here's the thing, though, with this week, I've locked in bets way ahead. Everything I'm giving out on the show, 90% of it, I'm already bet myself.
Right. I'm happy you said that because there are a couple lines that I'm pretty pissed off that I didn't lock in at the beginning of the week, and
Yeah.
we'll get into that. I just want to say before I got to pat myself on the back. One of the most profitable weeks I've ever had betting. I started off with my Jets minus 4.5, parlayed with the Bengals minus 1.5. That hit. Won a nice cash out on that, and then my group bet that I gave at the beginning of the World Cup. It was England, Argentina, Brazil, Portugal, and the Netherlands to win their groups. Not reinventing the wheel, just take the favorites. I slapped a good amount of money on it, won $400 off that.
Amazing.
And I won a
Good for
hockey
you.
bet. It's crazy. It's a
Amazing.
crazy week. And
Yeah, amazing.
now this is where I turn to you because I'm scared that the heater I'm a very pessimistic guy, and once the heater's been running, I kind of think at the back of my head, oh, when's it going to run out? So let's kick things off. I want to talk about this game first, not the game of the week in my opinion, but probably the most interesting game of the week in terms of storyline. And I mean, it has to be the Houston Texans at home against the Cleveland Browns. This game will be in Houston. Houston are 7-point underdogs. Obviously, the reason why this game is the most intriguing, at least from a storyline perspective, is the return of Deshaun Watson. Cash, I don't know about you, but I see this line, and listen, I'm not expecting the Texans to win. However, I may sprinkle some on the money line just because of a couple things. One, we don't know how Deshaun Watson is going to look having taken 700 days off from football. And two, frankly, quarterbacking wasn't the problem for Cleveland.
Yeah, it's tough. The professionals are coming in heavy on the Texans. I can't lay the 7 with the Browns because of Deshaun Watson. If I had a free bet, it would be the Browns minus 7. I don't think you need Deshaun Watson really to do anything with this offense. I think the running game goes for itself. I think they're going to put up, I don't know how many points they're going to put up. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop Texans running game. The spread, man, I can't get along with the spread. I can't get on the spread. A lot of people, one thing though that's triggering me a little bit this week is everyone's saying it's a massive revenge game for the Texans because Deshaun Watson left them and he's playing for the Browns now. But here's the thing: it's not the same head coach. 2 years ago, if you look at the exact same amount of players that are on this Texans roster that were 2 years ago, there's 4 players. So the ideology is there behind the revenge game, and like a lot of people want to get up for this Deshaun Watson game, and the Texans are going to want to win. But nobody on the roster played with him or knew how he was or any of that stuff. So I think the revenge factor is definitely being a little bit overlooked here. It's really basic what I'm going to do with this game. I'm just going to tie it into a tier. I'm going to take the Browns all the way down from 7. I'm going to put them down to 1. And I'll talk about this later on in the show, but there's a million different teaser options that you can put them with. So I'll definitely be looking to put the Browns in a -1 teaser. I'm not comfortable with laying the points, and I'm not comfortable with betting a total when we're talking about a quarterback who I haven't seen throw a football in a professional game in over 2 years.
Yeah, and I say the money line on the Texans just intrigues me because just from a value standpoint, we saw this. I think we could both agree. While you bring up a great point that only 4 players were on the roster when Deshaun Watson was a member of the Texans.
Yeah.
But by the same token, you'd have to think that this is the most fans that this Houston Texans team, the building will pack in,
Yeah.
all season. So that
Yeah.
place is going to be electric, and it's going to have a prime feel. And I found against the Eagles, obviously they didn't win that game. I don't remember if they covered or not, but they had some juice in their step in that game, and I'm expecting to see that same type of juice.
Yeah.
It's just like the line. I mean, 7 is not enough for me to want to jump on it, but I might sprinkle $5 on it.
Yeah. I can't blame you, man. I have no super strong opinion on this game. To tell you the truth, man, I'm really excited to watch it. I want to see how Deshaun Watson looks. I want to see how the offense looks. I'm super interested by this game.
So let's talk about the game of the week. It's the Kansas City Chiefs going on the road to my Cincinnati Bengals. My Bengals, who of course beat the Texans, the Titans last week. So take that, Sammy and in yellow. And so I just let's start this off because there's a lot of things about this game, and I can make arguments for both sides. But I want to start with this clip. Sammy and in yellow, go ahead.
Time like some of the missed tackles, explosive plays, a lot of it's going to come down to making the play on the ball, and they have 88 Higbee. No, it's not Higbee. Was with the Rams. What's his name? Not Higgins. It is Higgins. It's Higgins. Higbee and Higgins. They're going to have him back. He's a very talented receiver too, more of a finesse type of guy, not the best blocker. I'm going to lock him down, straight up. So we're going to have to come out of the game, like I said, play our best game and go out and do it.
So I promised Sammy and Yellow I would not make this the Cincinnati Bengals show, but I mean, how could I not play this clip? This is the most ridiculous clip I've ever seen. So a couple things here. One, he calls T. Higgins Tyler Higbee, when in fact, Tyler Higbee plays for the LA Rams, and I'm not even sure if he was talking about T. Higgins because our tight end, 88, is Hayden Hurst. And he's a great blocker. So I'm not really sure what's going on here. I mean, I think it's just unnecessary bulletin board material for the Bengals to counteract that double revenge game for the Kansas City Chiefs. And like, listen, I know it's Mahomes catching under 3. What more could you ask for?
Yeah.
However, there's just so much bulletin board material, and the Bengals, in the playoff game, they adjusted at halftime instead of rushing 4 or 5, they drop back 3. They rush 3, drop 8, and then Mahomes is sent for a ride, doesn't know what to do. So with all that being said, I'm the fan in me is definitely taking Bengals money line. I have a big 2-unit bet on the Bengals on the money line, but then on the other side, I'll say for you, Patrick Mahomes is 17-5-1 as a favorite of 3 or less.
Yeah, you're I think you're stepping in front of a bit of a train here. A lot of the pros are leaning Bengals. It's tough, man. For me, it's Kansas City or nobody, simply because of the playoff revenge. It's not only playoff revenge, it's playoff revenge, and it's revenge from, I think it was week 14 or 15 that they played the Bengals and they lost. And both games, they had hefty leads and they blew them both. Patrick Mahomes had his only bad playoff half of his entire career against the Bengals, and that's what the Bengals needed to get a win there. Both games were looking like a blowout, and that's just not how it ended up going. I think you're going to get a laser-focused Chiefs team. I don't know why the guy said that on the interview. I saw Andy Reid ripped him after for that. He wasn't too fond of that. You never want to give the other team extra motivation for absolutely no reason. But we're looking at one of the strongest angles here, man. We're looking at playoff revenge. And look at Mahomes. So the Chiefs played the Bucs, I think, in week 5. And that was the first time Mahomes was playing Brady and the Bucs since they lost to them in the Super Bowl. They were laser focused. I think Mahomes was up 20 points and he still scored a touchdown and he was still going nuts. You're going to see a locked in Kansas City team. You're going to see a team that has the lead. They're not going to take advantage of it. They're not going to sit on it. They're going to take advantage of the lead. Watch out for Kansas City. I'm going to be on Kansas City this week. I already have a bet on them. It's a smaller bet. It's not a huge bet because I respect a lot of the pros coming in on the Bengals, but I just like Kansas City at this side. I'm not going to overthink it. Mahomes under 3 points. Give me the best quarterback in the world.
No, and you know what? Again, I cannot fault you. And it's the same as last week. Like all my friends have been asking me, I cannot in good conscience tell you to bet on the Bengals. I cannot do it. And the only thing I have at this point is, the Ravens lost last week, which was all credit to you. All credit to you for the Jacksonville pick. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I was celebrating that game like it was the freaking Super Bowl.
It was amazing.
So it was incredible, just incredible. So I mean, the Bengals know they're tied with the they're tied with the Ravens for the division lead. Plus, also they're getting a little bit of a boost. I mean, a little bit. They're getting a big boost back in having Jamar Chase back, and having Joe Mixon back. So that's a massive boost on offense. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. But like you said, I mean, I can almost guarantee that Andy Reid and his staff, you know, they had the Rams last week. They didn't look too sharp. And I have a feeling that's because they were studying up on some film for the Bengals in preparation for this game. So again, I can't fault anyone for taking the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Patrick Mahomes under 3 points. It's a great bet.
Yeah.
Just the fan in me has to ride. I mean, they've won me money past 3 weeks in a row. I mean, I can't stop now. So let's talk about the next game. And where do you go? There are two games that interest me a lot for different reasons, but which game is intriguing to you?
The 49ers and the Dolphins one. I think that's probably the game of the week. I don't know how you can call the 49ers and the Dolphins the game of the week when there's the Chiefs and the Bengals playing, but I think the 49ers Bengals game is the consensus game. 49ers Dolphins game is the consensus game of the week. Would you agree with me?
I would, the bias in me is saying no, but it's two of the bigger markets in the NFL. Yeah. I mean, how can it not be?
Yeah, for sure. The 49ers and the Dolphins game really interests me. The Dolphins are on a tear against the spread, against the number they're dominating, against teams they're just blowing teams out. They have two of the best receivers in the whole league. Their quarterback, he's been okay. He's been good. I think he's a little bit overrated on a point spread point of view. He's just right for them because they're covering numbers. They're not being super favored in these games. As far as the 49ers go, you got an elite team. I think you got the best team in the NFL right here. I think you got the future Super Bowl champions. I'm going to be on the 49ers heavy, and I'm going to take a big stance on this weekend. It's going to be my most bet game. I've been betting it all throughout the week. I bet it at 3.5. I bet it at 4. I'm not going to be touching it at 4.5, but if it hits 3.5, I'm going to be betting it again. It's going to be my biggest bet for all my clients. I want everybody on the San Francisco 49ers. Everybody is slamming the Dolphins. I love to see it. These public underdogs never win. The public underdogs against the spread, when it's over like an 80% ticket to threshold, they're really, really bad. Look up the stats since 2010. I think they cash less than 45% of the time. Insane. Right. I really like the 49ers. I think their defensive line gets there. They're getting Eric Armstead back. This 49ers team is healthy, and they're really scary. Look out for a San Francisco 49ers blowout. They just played a garbage game against the Saints where they won 13-0 and they covered the spread. I don't think they're going to play two garbage games back-to-back. This is a Super Bowl caliber team. I think they're going to kill the Dolphins this weekend.
You know what? I don't want to say it because I have a dear friend of mine, one of my best friends in the world, who is a Dolphins fan, I really can't argue against it. This is one of those lines. I was really mad at myself. I was kicking myself at not getting it at 3.5, and now that it's at 4, I'm a little more hesitant, which I'm sure you can understand. But I'm right there with you. You know, it's just what the Dolphins can't get pressure, and they blitz a lot. They blitz a lot and they can't get pressure, and that's like the worst case scenario for playing the San Francisco 49ers offense. So I'm right there with you, and I mean, who knows? I'm interested to see from an NFL fan perspective, not necessarily a betting perspective, but from an NFL fan perspective. The Dolphins have been playing horrible teams, and rightfully so, taking care of business. That's no slight against them, but those horrible teams were putting up big numbers against that defense. So interested to see what they do against a well-rounded team in the 49ers. Definitely the biggest litmus test for the Dolphins this season. And you know what? By all accounts, also for the 49ers.
It is. It works both ways. Yeah. Agree. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. The next game that I want to talk about, because it's very, very interesting to me. I feel like I didn't see line movement all week, and I'm interested to get your take because I have my opinion on it. But the New York Jets traveling to Minnesota as 3-point underdogs. I mean, I'm leaning to bet heavy on the Jets. Yeah, this is going to be one of the bigger pros Joe's games. Recreational bettors are going to take the Vikings in the 3. The pros who are moving heavy money, they're going to be betting the Jets and taking the 3 points. I would advise you take the Jets in this matchup. I think 3 points is perfect. I think the Jets, when people see this
looking at the Jets team of old, this isn't the, like I think I mentioned this last week, this isn't the team from 2019, from 2020 or last year. Guys, this is a brand new Jets team. This defense is elite. Mike White was moving the ball well. The locker room's getting behind him. This Vikings team is like a 5. Literally, like if you look at the stats, guys, they're probably the luckiest team in the NFL right now, or the second luckiest team behind Washington. Yeah. This Vikings team is a 5-5 team. They're a 6-5 team at best right now. Their record is absurd, and you're getting a little bit of value for it. Here's the thing, though: an 8-2. What are the Vikings? 9-2. I think they're 9-2 now, right?
Something like that, yeah.
A 9-2 at home Vikings team like this, where they have maybe the best wide receiver in the league, and they're only laying 3 at home. That's the market's telling you. The markets are telling you they don't respect the Vikings, and they do respect the Jets a lot. Because if this game was played in New York, the Jets would be favored. Give me the Jets +3. It's the right side. If you're going to bet the Vikings, you need a 2.5, or else I would not lay it. Stay away from the Vikings. The Vikings are going to be really popular play this week. Do not do it. Bet the Jets big.
I'm so happy you just said that, because that confirms my 5th and final pick that I will be giving out on my side. So I hope you prepped your top 5. But yeah, I'm right there with you. And you know what? The only way I wouldn't have bet the New York Jets was if Zach Wilson was playing. You know, that was clear. That was just the clincher for me. Is Zach Wilson is not playing this game, they will be able to move the ball in some capacity against this Minnesota defense, which is frankly very, very underwhelming, as we said. One of the games that I wanted to mention, you know, that you can find the little nooks and crannies, you know, you can find the good bets if you go into those little nooks and crannies, is going to be I'm looking at the LA Chargers heading over to Las Vegas. That, you know, a coin flip game, at least as the market says, because, you know, the Chargers are the 1-point underdog in that game. Yeah. But to me, it's not that. It's the 49.5 over under. And I'm really leaning under in that one. And I'll tell you why. I don't think Mike Williams is going to go. Las Vegas just, you know, exploded last week. I don't think we're going to see that twice in a row. And I think the Chargers are going to have a lot of trouble with their offensive line banged up. That's simply why and it's a divisional game. And, you know, this is a stat I heard about divisional games. Each team is averaging just under 22 points. So it's a 44-point average, and that's divisional games. You know, points are hard to come by in the NFL this season, you know, especially 50-point games. Just give me the under. Both these teams are going to play hard, play tough, and that's what I got for you. Just give me the under in that game.
Yeah, as far as the total goes, I'd probably lean over. Divisional under trends, though, aren't the worst thing in the world. I don't have a super strong opinion on the over. I do have a really strong opinion on the side. As far as just the total goes, you have 2 really bad defenses, right? The Chargers are really banged up on defense, and the Raiders this season have been terrible on defense as well. I think that's a little bit of a recipe for the over, but again, no strong opinion there. My strong opinion on this game is on the side. I really, really like the Raiders. The Raiders opened up +2.5. They were bet down to 2, 1.5. Now the game's a pick. Everybody in the public, all the Joes, again, all the recreational bettors are going to absolutely love the Chargers. Watch out for this Chargers team, man. The Raiders are severely underrated. Their record is lying. The Raiders are the opposite of the Vikings. Their record lies. They're a lot better than their record. They've been super unlucky. This Raiders team is good. They can run the ball. And here's the thing. Josh Jacobs looks like he's going to play on Sunday. Well, the Chargers can't stop the run right now, and Josh Jacobs has been on absolute fire this year. He's been, like, everyone is hyping up Devontae Adams and everything that he was going to be for the Raiders. Well, Josh Jacobs has lived up to expectations. This guy's going to run all over the Chargers on Sunday. It's a revenge game. The Raiders season might turn around after this game. They've won 2 straight against 2, I'd say, phony opponents. I don't know. I wouldn't call them phony, but 2 like subpar opponents. This game matters a lot to both teams. I don't know if the Raiders are going to make the playoffs, but if they want a chance to make the playoffs, they desperately need a win today. This series always goes 1-1. They always split games in this series. They did it last year. I think they're going to do it again this year. Give me the Raiders. I think the Raiders are going to win double digits.
And okay, you know what? I'm surprised by that. You know, again, it's on the surface. You know, every week I say this to myself, and I found myself doing it last week when, you know, I took the Chargers minus, I think it was 2.5 or 3.
Me too.
Against the Coyotes. I'm thinking hockey now. The Cardinals. That's right. Yeah. You know, and just I was so angry at that game because and you know, I wasn't even angry with the Chargers. I was more angry with myself, convincing myself, you know, that the Chargers are a good team.
Yeah.
I get fooled into it, but the fact is, no matter who the coach is, be it Anthony Lynn or Brandon Staley or whoever it is, they love to lose games. And if they don't go for 2, which is a brilliant move, by the way, whether they made it or didn't, it was a brilliant move. It's just I can't fool myself into taking the Chargers again.
Yeah.
And that's why I might tell you on the Las Vegas bet, because it's just I really, at this point, the Chargers are on my blacklist. I don't want to bet them. I don't want to touch them. I don't care if they're plus, if they're 20-point underdogs. I'm not going to do it. I know they're gonna find a way to screw it up. Another game that's quite interesting, and if it wasn't for last week, I don't think it would be that interesting. But because the Jacksonville Jaguars pulled off what was just an incredible win, we got to talk about this game before we get to the Titans and the Eagles. But the Jacksonville Jaguars are in a coin flip game. Really depends on the sports book you use. Pretty sure on Betway, I think you're looking at the Detroit as the 1-point favorite. Some other books have Detroit as the underdog. Really depends where you're betting. I love Detroit at home. I love it. I love it. They are averaging 30 points at home. And I think they're just going to keep rolling at home. And I think they're going to take this game.
Yeah, I'm taking a really strong stance on the Jaguars. This game's
really
this game is super split, man. The pros are on both sides of this game. The line movement's been crazy. It opened up Lions -2, and it went all the way to the Jaguars -2.5. Came back down. I think it's going to close Pick'em. Pick'em is pretty much where it's at right now.
Yeah.
The Jags are a little bit of a letdown because the Jags did just have a crazy game against the Ravens, the win of their season. Trevor Lawrence starting to look good. Their defense is good. I just can't trust the Lions. They beat the Bears and they covered against the Bills, but I can't do it with the Lions. I can't trust them in this spot to beat a feisty Jaguars team. Give me the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are still a little bit undervalued. Another thing is the Jaguars still control their own destiny, because if they have 2 games left against the Titans, and I don't think it'll happen, but if they somehow do miraculously beat the Titans twice, they'll be in the wild card. They'll win their division and have a playoff game at home. I think the season isn't over yet for the Jaguars. The season's over for the Lions. It's mostly coaching and players trying to play for a contract, trying to pay for their next job. Be careful with the Lions. Again, it's a bit of a toss-up game, and a lot of pros think that. I personally really, really like the Jaguars. It's one of my favorite plays this week. I will be heavy on the Jaguars, but I can't fault you for being on the Lions at all.
Well, that's it. It's if this game is the road, we're talking a whole different. It's completely different for me, because Detroit just looks terrible on the road for whatever it is. They get up in front of their own fans. If anything, I might take a look at the over, which is set, I believe, at 51 flat. So that's to me, that's a great over spot, especially with that Detroit stat, averaging 30 points at home. All right, let's talk about it, because I got a strong feeling about this game, and I'm I feel like talking to you for the past 2 weeks, including this hit. I feel like we're going to be siding on this one, which is Tennessee traveling to Philadelphia +4.5. Another one of those lines. I'm pissed at myself that I did not bet on this at 5.5. But here we are, and I love Tennessee +4.5, and I think they're going to win this game.
Yeah, I do too, and I fired at them at 5.5. I love Tennessee. It's probably my favorite play of the week. I think they're going to keep this game close. I bet the money line as well. There's one thing with this game, though, that scares me a little bit. The books don't like giving money for free, and the Titans look pretty free, man. At 5.5 off a loss, you're giving me probably the better coach team against a team that can't stop the run. Derrick Henry's going to be running all over these Eagles. The line looks fishy, man. The one thing that's given me a little bit of relief when it comes to this, though, is the line has moved down. It's to open 6.5, went to 5.5, and then it went to 4.5. I absolutely love the Titans. I love them. The only thing that scares me is that the books would put out a line like this. That's kind of them telling me they know something that I don't. Because the way I see this game, man, I have this game at around 3. I would not have this game over 3. It's at 4.5 right now. If I was you guys, I would take the 4.5. I would take it at 4. I would take it at 3.5, and I would still take it at 3. I bet the money line. I just don't see the Titans losing this game. Again, the line is scary. The books might be telling me that they know something that I don't, but I just can't not bet this Titans team at this number. I can't do it.
Well, I'll tell you I'm right there with you, because I'll tell you this, just based on what I saw last week
Yeah.
against, with Tennessee playing the Bengals. The Bengals came in with a game plan, and that game plan was we are going to shut down Derrick Henry by all means possible. Any means necessary, we're shutting him down, and we're going to force Ryan Tannehill to beat us with his arm. And I feel like that's what's happening here. That's going to be what's happening because Tennessee, Vrabel's coming in with a great defensive plan. He is a defensive mastermind, and what Tennessee does well on defense is stop the run.
Yeah.
What do the Eagles do best? Run the ball. So this seems to me as a gamble more on Jalen Hurts or against Jalen Hurts than it is on the Titans, because it's the same thing. That the Titans are coming in, they're going to say we're going to shut down your run game. So Jalen Hurts better be prepared to beat us with his arm. Yeah. So it's going to be a big moment in this season where Jalen Hurts has really come alive, and he's been billed as he's looking like the MVP front runner right now. Well, this game is going to show us, because I have a feeling he's going to have to use his arm heavy, and this is just a nasty Tennessee defense, and they are going to be angry after last week's loss to the Bengals.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Titans look too easy, man. That's the one thing that scares me. It's just they look so easy.
Exactly. And you know what? This wouldn't scare me at all if it was early in the season, because early in the season, the books are still adjusting to the teams. Surprises happen. But at this point, the books know what they're doing. So I'm right there with you. It scares me a little bit. Last one I want to talk about before we get to our picks and we wrap this baby up, because I'm a little bit under the weather, so I got to get to bed. Plus, USC is putting me in a really bad mood because they're losing by 10.
Too, man.
It's just really bad. I have it on in the background.
Man, don't even get me started.
Yeah. We won't go there. So I mean, let's just talk about this game. Denver Broncos going to Baltimore. Baltimore are, the last I saw, 9.5 point favorites. It's with the state of this Baltimore offense, it's too much for me to touch, but I will likely tease it down to a 2.5, no problem. But what also interests me is we talked about it last week, these exaggerated numbers on the over-unders. And, that's usually the case whenever you see a number on the higher end of the spectrum of the mid 50s. Yeah. But also just any number that starts with a 3, I raise an eyebrow. And I mean, the Broncos just never go over. So why would I not bet the under 39.5?
You should bet the under, man. The under is these teams trend under. The Ravens offense is struggling. I had the under in the Jaguars game. Should have won. That was a tough beat on the under, but luckily my bigger bet was on the Jaguars. That got there. It's a tricky game. I think if you're betting the side, number one, if you're going to tease this, you tease the Ravens, you take the Ravens. And by the way, I think USC just scored a touchdown.
Yeah, they absolutely did. They absolutely did. I needed to hold it together. I wanted to hold it together.
Yeah. It's a tricky game. And here's the truth about it. I think if you're going to bet the side of this game without teasing it, you're going to take the Broncos plus 9.5. I think you're buying low on the absolute lowest point of this Broncos team. They still have an elite defense. And what do you need? I think you need 14 points and you're going to cover this 8.5 or this 9.5. I think 14 points will get you there for the Broncos. And I think the Broncos, look, their offense sucks. They're absolutely garbage. I think that this Broncos team might be one of the worst teams in the NFL, the worst offense for sure. I'm not going to bet the side. I'm definitely not going to be involved in the side. I'm not interested whatsoever. Yeah. I would tease the Ravens at 2.5, but I saw this number go to 9 and 9.5. I'm probably going to stay off this game. If I had a free play, it would 100% be on the under. Most definitely be on the under. The one thing, and I spoke to you about this about Justin Fields, but this kind of scared me. Right. When I told you about Justin Fields, that the regression was going to catch up, I was wrong because that week he went over. Well, it's different. A player prop is going to be bet like less than 0.5% of the time, right? But the totals are bet a lot more heavily. And this is going to be something that's deeply recognized by the betting community, that this Broncos team goes under a lot. And I think it's going to be a popular bet. And you can already see, man, the number's 39.5. It's going to get low. I think it's going to get even lower on game time. That scares me a little bit. But if I had a free bet, it would be the under.
Right. And it's just the only way I just feel like you said, this is taking advantage of a Broncos team who's at their lowest point. And just, the way I see it, you got those clips of guys yelling at Russ, your reports coming out that he's lost the locker room. Frankly, I think Nathaniel Hackett's a freaking idiot, for the lack of a better term. So, I mean, it's just a massive, massive mismatch on every measurable metric, and it's just crazy. The only time that the Broncos will stack up is because the defense, and you'd have to think it's because Nathaniel Hackett doesn't get to touch the defense. So I mean, the only thing I can't trust the Baltimore Ravens to score points, and Denver stinks. So that just this game screams under to me. It started off at 38, interestingly enough. Started off at 38. I noticed that, and then it went all the way up to 39 and a half. So which is telling me even more, just hammer that under, hammer the under, and just keep fading the Broncos, because frankly, the only thing that would make me want to bet them less in this world, like you or I could be starting quarterback for them, and I would still, whatever my opinion would be, the only way they could be worse is if Zach Wilson was starting. So with that, we are gonna get to sick picks.
It's time for Sick Picks. Brought to you by Betway.
So we are at the portion of where Cash and I give our top 5 plays, and brought to you by Betway. So sign up and deposit on Betway. Bet your way. You must be 19 years old, 19 years or older to play. Please play responsibly. My first pick, very, very simple, Cash. And, we spoke about it near the beginning of the segment, and I'm bringing it back. Just give me T. Higgins. Give me over 65.5 yards. I don't even have to think twice about it. He is that dude. And, it's going to go back to bracketing Jamar Chase. One-on-one.
He's going to be open. I like it.
That's all it is.
I'm with you there. Mine's going to be pretty easy, man. The 49ers minus, I'm going to say 4 on the show. I'm going to advise you not to bet the 4, because this number is not going to go any higher than 4, I don't think. If it's still 4, 354, wait for a 3.5. 3.5, super underrated number. At 3.5, if you score a touchdown and they score a field goal, you're covering your spread. At 4, you're not. It's going to be one of my absolute top plays this week, and it'll be my first sick pick.
Yeah, so I love it, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that game up until kickoff and looking for that 3.5. That's it. To me, there's 2 key numbers. There's the 2.5, and then there's the 3.5, because the 2 and it's a very key number for me. And I don't like bet like when a team needs to win 5. It's a weird number. I'm not about that. My second pick, and I'm imagining you're going to have this in your top 5. We spoke about it at length. The Tennessee Titans plus 4.5.
Yeah. Well, how can you not? Like I said, the thing that scares me about this game is that it seems a bit too free. And usually when that happens, the bookies they know something that you don't.
They're salivating right now. They're salivating watching all the money come in.
Well, after the pod, I'm definitely going to speak to Aniello, because he's got a good sense of when the Titans are going to win outright, if they're in a good spot or a bad spot. I'm curious to see what he says. I hope he says they're going to win, because he's usually right about his team. But for me, the Titans look like the best pick on the board.
Yeah. So your number 2 pick is also the Titans, I would imagine, because we spoke about it. Okay, let's go to number 3. I'm taking. You validated my decision. I'm taking the Jets. Plus 3. Give me Mike White. Give me that defense. And, I really don't like the way Kirk Cousins has looked. He's had a few good games, put up points against, and Utah just scored a touchdown. He put up a few points against the Patriots. But again, I just, you know what? I'm going to die on this hill. I'm just going to die on the hill of, I think these Vikings are frauds. I just think they're frauds. And nobody will shake me off that. No win, nothing will shake me off of it. Give me the Jets plus 3.
Yeah, I'm here with you as well. It's going to be one of my top picks. It has to be. If I'm not taking this, I'd have to pick something else, and I can't. I really like the Jets plus 3, so that's going to be my 3rd pick as well.
One game. You know what? I want to talk about this. Just give me 30 seconds on this, because I need to get your opinion on it, because I've been hearing some things about this game. Been meaning to talk to you about it. It slipped my mind. Okay, Seattle at LA. The Rams are +7. Tempted to take the +7 for two reasons. One, the Rams have zero incentive to tank. They are. Exactly? What are they going to be gunning for the 100th overall pick, whatever it may be? Anyways, the other thing is that this is a divisional game, and I think Seattle. This is 2 weeks now. They've gotten exposed. And just, these are professional athletes. Yeah. And I don't know. It just seems like too many points for the Rams.
Yeah, it is. You're on the sharp side for sure. I think a lot of the professionals are going to be coming in on the Rams, and they have been. The numbers moved down already. This is going to be another massive divide. I think the recreational players are going to be on Seattle. A lot of the professionals, a lot of the smart, sharp money is going to be on the Rams. I don't really have a stance in this game. I can't take the Rams. I just can't do it. It's a personal preference. If I had a game, it would be the Rams, but it's definitely sharp review to take the Rams for sure. It's definitely going to be one of the sharper, less looked at games this week, but the Rams are what I would call a sharp play, something that I think is going to cash. If I had a free pick, it would be the Rams. Rams are nothing. I just can't do it.
Yeah, no, it's just because, this is a divisional game where, on the surface, the Rams right now are a corpse of a team.
Yeah.
But this reminds me of this is the year that the Bengals, I think Joe Burrow got injured. So it was the year that they drafted Jamar Chase. They hosted the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football. Pittsburgh was, I believe, 11-0 or maybe 11-1 at this point. Yeah. And they killed them. They killed them. And it's screaming at me. It's a stark reminder of that game. So I'm not going to put it as part of my top 5, but just be aware, everyone out there listening to us, the Rams +7 might be the right play. Okay, my fourth pick is going to be, I spoke about it before, and I'm going to stick with the guns. I'm going to stick with my guns, and I'm going to take the under in the LA Chargers Las Vegas game. I just think it's two horrible defenses, like you said, but to me, it's just the Chargers just look like they move the ball. So every down is just a struggle for them. Yeah. And I don't care, what defense they're playing against. They can barely move the ball against the freaking Cardinals. So and that was with Mike Williams for at least a half. So, just give me the under in that game at 49.5. If he goes to 50.5, that's a definite hammer.
Yeah, I'll take the side of that game. I'll take the Raiders on that game. It's going to be a strong 2-unit play. It's going to be a big on Sunday. I've already bet it myself, and it will be on the card Sunday 100%.
Yeah. Okay, so my last one will be we spoke about it. I don't think I counted it in my
let's go head to head.
But let's you want to okay, so you know what? I'm going to take let's do this. How about this? We're both going to give our final pick, and then we're going to pick a game. And we're going to each pick a side, and we'll go head to head on that. How about that?
Sounds good.
So let's for my final pick of my top 5, I'm going to go Denver Broncos at Baltimore Ravens under 39.5. I just, the Broncos cannot score points. The Ravens, by all accounts, scoring points is a struggle for them for the most part. So just give me the under.
Yeah, I'll take the Giants +2.5. I think the Commanders are a little bit overvalued. This line being at 2.5 while the Giants are at home, that tells me what the Commanders would be a 5-point or a 6-point favorite at home. I don't buy it. Give me the Giants +2.5. You can get a teaser all the way to up to 8.5 as well. That's a sharp look at this game outright.
All right, so I think for our head-to-head game, we spoke about at the not just off the hop, but it was the second game we spoke about. I think it would be quite appropriate for us to go head-to-head on Kansas City at the Cincinnati Bengals. And, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm doing it on my own. I have bet placed right now. I actually just cashed it out in case I think that more sharp money is going to see Patrick Mahomes under 3 points, and it's just going to start flowing in. It's going to start flowing in. So I just cashed it out so I could get a better number on the Bengals, but I'm going to take the Bengals money line for our head-to-head.
Amazing, man. Let's do it. Yeah, I really like the Chiefs. We'll see what happens, but it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic game. You have Joe Burrow taking on Patrick Mahomes. Just, enjoy it. Enjoy it. This is, it could be. I'm not prepared to crown it just yet, but this could be Brady versus Manning 2.0. So, folks, everyone out there, just enjoy it.
Yeah.
All right. Cash, just before I let you go, just tell everyone, give everyone just a quick reminder of where we can find your stuff.
Yeah, you guys can shoot me on Instagram at Run My Bets. You can find me on Twitter, Run My Bets. I don't use Twitter as much, though, so you might have to wait a little bit longer for me to respond. Check my Instagram, though. I will respond instantly. I have a free play chat in my Instagram bio as well. If you don't see it, just shoot me a message, and I'll add it to you. I post free plays every day. Shoot me a message, say hello, all that kind of stuff. Find me on Instagram.
All right, Cash, thank you very much.
Thank
we
you,
will
man.
talk. I'm sure we're going to be talking in the very near future, if not next week. So
Yeah.
enjoy the football on Sunday, and by all
You
accounts,
too, man.
I guess go USC
Yeah.
for whatever chance we have left here, which is
Yeah.
basically none.
Yeah,
All right, Cash, have a good night. All right, it's that time. Just before we wrap up, it's time to go for gold.
Go for gold. A daily World Cup report.
Alfonso Davies keeps it himself. Goal!
Presented by Bijouterie Bossy.
Alfonso Davies.
All right, so it was a crazy final day of group play in the World Cup. Yesterday was absolute madness in group. I think it was, hold on, let me just get it in front of me. In Group E, that's right, with Japan taking top spot. For a second, it looked like Costa Rica was gonna squeak in, but of course, we all know what happened after that. So what happened today? Madness. Okay, so let me take you back to, I believe it was 2010, Uruguay playing Ghana. This game is in the knockout phases. You know, the game goes to extra time, and Ghana has a sure goal, but wait, Luis Suarez bats it off the goal line. Handball, red card, and then penalty to Ghana. Miss the penalty. Game goes to penalties. Uruguay comes back with a win. This was the grudge match. This is it. Revenge game. You know, it's 12 years later, Ghana is still thinking about this. Well, they got revenge, but not in the way they wanted. They lost 2-0. Now, why is that significant? Because Korea Republic beat Portugal 2-1. So, with that result, they were even on goal differential. What does that mean? What's the next tiebreaker? Card differential. That's right. Uruguay had 7 minutes after the Portugal and Korea game ended to score one more goal. They could not. They lose. Ghana gets revenge, but unfortunately for Ghana, they do not move on. Another crazy game today. Switzerland against Serbia. Now, what happened in this one? Okay, so Switzerland in the 20th minute comes out, early lead. Bang. And what does Serbia do? 6 minutes later, Mitrovic scores a goal of his own. Then what happens after that? Dusan Vlahovic, one of the young up-and-comers in the world, scores. But wait, that was in the 35th minute. But wait, just before halftime, Embolo at the 44th minute ties it up 2-2. Very exciting half. And then Switzerland kind of took over in the second half, scored an early goal, kind of locked it down after that. And then Cameroon pulling off. I mean, it was kind of, didn't really matter in the end for the group standings, but Cameroon pulling off the upset against Brazil. But by all accounts, they were resting. I think it was 9 out of their 11 starters. So the group stages are done. The knockout stage begins, and it begins tomorrow. Pull up the graphic if we have it. Tomorrow's games, there you see them. The one in the morning, USA taking on the Netherlands. And then in the afternoon, you have Argentina taking on Australia. Now, I love the Australia story. It's fantastic. I was cheering for them. I was mad at myself that I didn't bet them to move on and win in that game that sent them into the qualifier. But, it is what it is. This is where they come crashing back down to earth. They're facing a crazy team in Argentina. Don't think they're going to win the whole tournament, but they'll certainly end the Cinderella story against Australia and send them home down under. And you want to look value. Take a look at the line on the United States and Netherlands. Now, do I think the United States are going to win this game in regular time? No. goes to extra time, I think it's possible. They have a pretty stout defense, does the U.S. Netherlands, they look like a pretty team when they want. Tough game. I think it's pretty evenly matched, but with the value that's placed on the U.S., I think I would lean, if I was betting on the game, towards that. And then Sunday, those two games on Sunday, I'm just going to talk about them just for a little bit. Sorry, Aniello and Sammy, I'm making you work overtime tonight, same as last week. Listen, it is what it is. You're the guys who hired me. England taking on Senegal, France taking on Poland. If those games go the way they should go, and the way I want them to go, frankly, be it meaning England moving on against Senegal, because I am an England fan, then we get a fantastic second round matchup of a quarterfinal matchup, I should say, of England taking on France. So that would be great. Again, so tomorrow's games, Netherlands taking on the USA at 10 a.m. And then at 2 p.m., Argentina taking on Australia. For Gold, by the way, is brought to you by Bijouterie Bassi. Thank you for listening. Good luck with your bets on Sunday if you're tailing either cash or I. And Tony will be back on Monday. Thank you for listening. Peace.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different, 8.6, intense by nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.